Hello and welcome back to the Inside Social Work podcast. Join me as we go behind the scenes of different areas of social work, sharing candid conversations, practical insights and thought-provoking issues. Together we'll explore the vulnerable moments, share our struggles and triumphs and reflect on the day-to-day experiences that shape us as social workers. I'm joined once again by Bronwyn Milkins from the Mental Work podcast for an important and often overlooked conversation. And just a warning, this one has some sensitive content, so if you've got little ears around, best to maybe listen to this at another time. We're going to be talking about the impact of losing a patient to suicide. For mental health professionals, working with clients in deep distress is part of the job. But what happens when a client dies by suicide? The emotional toll can be devastating, and yet it's something we don't often talk about. I know I didn't talk about it with anybody prior to being in that position myself. It can be full of grief, guilt, self-doubt, and even sometimes professional repercussions can weigh on us really heavily, making it hard to process, move forward and even know where to start or what to do. In this episode, Bronwyn and I explore some of the emotional and professional impact of client suicide, the stigma that's around discussing this topic, and the ways in which mental health professionals can support themselves and each other during this incredible, difficult experience. All right, Bronwyn, we're thinking about this topic and we weren't sure exactly how to start or we recognized it was something that needed to be destigmatized.
Yep.
And that it was something we felt we could do.
Yeah, I mean, I think where I'd like to start is just the reality of the situation. And that's just to bring a few stats into the picture. Because in Australia, suicide is a huge, huge issue in Australia. So in 2023, there were 3,214 deaths by suicide. And this translates to approximately 9 lives lost every day. And that's 9 people lost, that's 9 communities affected, that's 9 families affected. And potentially if those people are seeking health or mental health help, that's at least 9 professionals who are affected by suicide. So the reality is that it's more common than perhaps we think it is, and it has the potential to affect almost all of us.
Absolutely. It is quite common, and we're not going to have a conversation about suicide prevention or anything like that at this point. But that is another topic that would be very interesting. I've been thinking about what makes this particular way of dying more difficult to talk about, because if you worked in another industry, and one of the articles we were looking at in preparation for this, which we will put in the show notes, they had this quote that I said, we want them, this was talking about psychologists, to recognize that just like with cancer or heart disease, there is a mortality rate associated with mental illness. What is it about dying by suicide that impacts people in such a different way to having a patient die if you're a doctor or a medical professional through heart disease or cancer or another cause?
Yeah, and it's a really interesting question because I have had patients die by natural age before I had a patient who died by suicide, and even after that. And it didn't affect me as strongly and I felt very sad. But with a patient who died by suicide, I think the thing that I was telling myself is that I felt like it was a failure. I felt like it was a systemic failure that could have been prevented and that I played a role in that. And that was my immediate reaction, and that was something that I needed to work with. But I think that's why it hit me so hard. What about you?
I think firstly, there is a legal fear.
Yes.
There is am I going to be there like someone in a movie where Matthew McConaughey's grilling me like, what is it, A Time to Kill? But it did bring up ideas of, could I have seen it? Am I incompetent? Could I have done something different? I feel like, and maybe medical professionals feel the same thing. Maybe they think, had we intervened soon, had we given this medication, like maybe, I don't know. I really don't know how they feel about it, but there is something that maybe because it's not so talked about and it's shrouded in mystery, we feel a lot more responsible, like we could have done something different.
Yeah, I do think the silence makes it even harder to process because we are left maybe with those unfair, sense of over-responsibility for ourselves, and we don't have somebody else to give us perspective on that. Yeah.
I remember where and when, exactly what I was doing when I got that phone call.
Yeah, I remember.
And it hit me. It was crushing.
Yeah.
I picked up the phone just thinking it was a rescheduling of an appointment, and it was a member of that person's family sharing the news. And it was in the middle of my workday.
Yeah.
And I had to, and I've never had to do this, but I had to cancel people within like 10 minutes. I mean, I'm sorry, I can't do our next appointment.
Yeah.
It was, it hit me like a ton of bricks.
Absolutely. Yeah. I similarly felt like I'd been hit by a ton of bricks. It felt devastating.
What did you do? Like immediately after getting that notification?
Well, it sounds like you were alone. I wasn't alone when I found out. I was at work and I was with my work colleagues. And so we got the information at the same time. And I think I just felt like I was probably dissociating. I just felt like everything around me went silent. I think we were all silent. We were just all in shock. And to be honest, I think my memory probably isn't the best even for what I did next, because maybe the next thing I remember is having to get through the morning, because we were running a group therapy program and we just had to get through the morning. And then I must have put all my feelings aside and then sitting in shock for the rest of the day. Yeah, so not much emotional reactions, just shock and disconnect, I think.
I was alone. It was lockdown.
Yeah.
And I was a sole practitioner, so there was no one.
Yeah.
But I had this feeling of who can I call that won't be distressed by my distress.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
So I had this, I like to call my mum for a lot of stuff or a partner.
Yeah.
But I thought, who can I call that if I say what just happened?
Yeah, they're not going to freak out.
They're not going to freak out.
Yeah.
And it's not that I felt like I needed to take care of them, but I'm like, who can hold this?
Yeah.
And so that was, I had to sit there and think, what do I do next? Who can I call?
And did you have somebody who you felt you could call?
I called a friend who is a brilliant therapist, and she happened to know. I just thought, I think she can cope with it. And I felt bad. I actually thought, I don't want to now burden someone else with this. But she didn't know it was not a connection for her.
Yeah.
And she was like, call your clients, cancel the day, contact your supervisor. She knew who it was.
Yeah.
Book in a supervision.
Yeah.
Tell her what happened.
Yeah.
And so my supervisor squeezed me in that day.
Yeah.
And so I needed someone to literally tell me, put this down, close it, like do X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
And then she sent me a care pack. So I got, I think that day or the next day, somewhere really close in that week, a box of like cheese and salamis and
That's really
chocolates.
sweet.
But it also came in a week where I had very close to that another death in the family.
Oh,
so it was like
nice.
this double whammy during lockdown. So I was really thinking, who can I reach out to that I'm not going to burden? Because I think some people would freak out.
Yeah, I agree. And it sounds like the response from both your friend and your supervisor were good, like you felt supported.
Oh, they were amazing.
Yeah.
Absolutely. How about you after?
I think I do wonder whether we could have talked about it more, but then I think maybe it was all of us trying to process it. I think maybe I could have reached out externally. Maybe I should have done that, which I didn't. I didn't reach out externally. It was only amongst us, our colleagues, and maybe it would have been good because even though we're all going the same thing, maybe we weren't capable of supporting each other. So maybe that's something I would have done differently. I would have reached out externally.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because when I run training and we talk about suicide prevention and we talk about distress, one of the things we ask people is to reach out to resources they've used in the past.
Yeah.
And so I'm just trying to think on the receiving end, if I had a supervisee or a client email me and say, XYZ situation has happened, can I get in an earlier spot?
Yeah.
I would find an earlier spot somehow. And it's not like, it doesn't feel like it's one of those pushing my boundaries thing, but I would make room. And so having a friend push me to do that, I don't know if I would have done it on my own. I could have easily have just squished it down, really struggled for the next couple of sessions and collapsed into a heap or numbed it. Like there could have been a million other things, but reaching out was actually really hard. And if it wasn't for sort of trying to keep practicing, being vulnerable, I don't know if I would have.
It's really interesting. I guess it speaks to, because I'm assuming you don't have stigma around reaching out. Like it wasn't a matter of if I reach out, I'm weak or anything like that.
It wouldn't have been weak, but it might have been, I don't know, maybe no one will care enough, or what's it to them, or I don't want to burden them. They've got their own problems. I don't want to burden like my friends to be my personal therapist.
Yeah.
So there was a million different things. Like, I don't want them to think that they are pressured, or like, so there's a million different things that normally I'm not an anxious person, but when something like that big comes up, I was like paralyzed with overwhelm.
Yeah.
And also numbness at the same time. It was actually a very strange feeling.
Yeah, it was very numbing, and I can relate to that because I didn't end up even receiving external help for it. Like I never talked with a therapist about it. I debriefed with my work colleagues, and then it got to a point with my work colleagues where the senior person was like, this happens in our line of work. And she wasn't like, get over it. She was really good, but it was kind of like our conversations around this are done. And then I was left to process that on my own, and I still had things to process around it. So I felt overwhelming guilt. I felt regret. I felt like I should have seen this coming. I had concluded about the person on their last day that I saw them. I was like, oh, I think they're getting better. And I beat myself up about that so much because I was like, how could you be so stupid? And I think differently about that now, but that took me a while to process on my own.
Yeah. As I was preparing for this, I was kind of looking up some articles, and there isn't actually a lot for Australian context. So a lot of this was British and American. And this one quote stood out to me. It's from an article in the International Association of Suicide Prevention that says suicide of a patient is one of the most distressing events in the professional life of healthcare workers. It affects them not only on a professional, rational level, but also as an emotional, personal experience. And I think that was something also that I didn't expect, and balancing that with confidentiality. So being able to talk about how I felt without disclosing any personal circumstances. And because I work a lot with young people, I'm quite whimsical and I customize things. So if they've got an interest in, I don't know, the game Exploding Kittens, I'll keep those things in mind when I'm upgrading resources. So I had made some upgrades and adjustments to work with this particular person. So whenever I saw those items that I had intentionally curated for my work with them, the grief would come.
Yeah, it's a reminder.
It's a reminder. But then also I felt maybe I was going to be the one that helped.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe you were going to be the one that saved them and you could have Did you feel a sense of failure?
Not personally, because we hadn't worked together a long time, and they were a very chronically unwell person in and out of various services.
Yeah.
So it didn't feel like it was all on me, but there was this I had hope that we connected and we had rapport and we'd done all this work together and we were getting somewhere. And I think I was one of the last people to have a session with them. So it also felt like this can't be real.
Yeah. It's so much. I think the emotional impact can't be understated. Like that quote captures it really well. It is one of the hardest things. It really brings into question like everything we know, all our beliefs about ourselves. Like, it's just so much.
It's been a few years and it gets me kind of teary even thinking about it. Like I'm trying to sit on that cusp of if I go too far into it, I'll probably burst into tears and be a sobbing mess, but enough to make this hopefully a valuable listening experience. But if you're giving advice to people going through this, maybe let's start with right at the start. What can they do?
I think, that comes to processing and coping with the loss. For coping in the immediate aftermath, I would recommend getting external support. You might feel very numb and disconnected, but it can just help having that connection to somebody else who can be empathetic and sit with you in those emotions. I think that would be helpful. And then I think longer term, it is processing everything that comes up. For me, it was the immense guilt, and I overcompensated by making sure that my risk assessments were like airtight. Like I obsessed about it too much, and I made my assessments that I have the most comprehensive suicide risk assessment that you'll ever see because that was my way of coping and processing. And I was like, I am going to make sure this never happens again. And then I had to even unpack that because I'm like, this is fallible. It can happen again.
But that's in the research we did, little R research.
Yeah.
That was one of the common things, that the hypervigilance.
Yeah.
And either a fear of taking on that presentation again or some people leaving the field altogether.
Yeah. It was definitely fearful of taking on that presentation again, and I avoided that. And in the article we read, the psychologist in the article did similarly. It took them a year before they could see a similar presentation. I don't see that as bad. I see that as like doing what we need to do to cope with this loss. And if those reminders bring up overwhelming guilt or grief, we may not be the best therapist for that person at that time because we're still processing our own stuff.
I like to think about what maybe it's easier to say what not to do. But as you were saying about reaching out, I think about most of the people, and when I think of some of the people I work with and some of the workshops I've run recently, even some of the group supervisions and reflective practice groups, the main contact for those workers is their partner or spouse. And so they get home and they trauma dump, which can leave their partner distressed. But also the partners don't know how to be helpful. And so I'm thinking about like, so if you're listening and around supporting someone else, don't try to fix it.
No, I didn't want somebody to fix it. Like I was going to say, as you were saying, that the best thing that my partner did was sit next to me and hug me. That's it. I didn't want them to fix it or take it away. I'm like, just be with me while this is hard.
And so don't try and fix it. And that means not challenging all of those feelings. Don't say, you're not to blame. You did the best you could. This could happen to anybody. None of that.
No.
That's not cool.
Yeah.
I know some people's instinct is to give space.
I wouldn't like that.
I wouldn't like that either. I would feel like my feelings are too big for the other person.
Yeah, exactly.
And it would make me feel so alone.
Yes, I would feel so alone.
So sitting with me or near me, allowing space, like even if I was to be sobbing on the couch, just sitting there.
Yeah.
Because if I want to be, I will remove myself.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Cup of tea, hot water bottle, like whatever, seasonally dependent. But doing nothing is not okay.
Yes.
Trying to fix it, not okay.
Yeah.
It's literally in that prickly bit, holding space, tolerating their pain and their discomfort.
Yeah.
And I would even go on for that. I hate being asked, what do you need right now?
Yeah.
In that kind of heightened state because I don't fucking know.
I don't know. Yeah.
And I don't know what you're capable of. If I was to say, yeah, great, I'd want a, I don't know, raspberry cheesecake.
Yeah.
Like, is that helpful? Like, can you make me one? Like, I'd rather that person say, would you like to go for a drive to the beach?
Yeah.
Can I make you some chicken soup? Or would you like to watch a movie and just sit in silence? Like, actually give a couple of options of something that you're capable of doing.
I agree. Yeah, I really like that. And something that my partner did which was really helpful was he was just like, how is it today? And I could be like, it's hard today, or it's okay today, or it's I'm not sure right now how I am. Like, I'll let you know. But just taking it easy with each other, being gentle. Sometimes I was really angry about the suicide, not at the patient, but just at the situation. I was really angry that this had occurred. And sometimes I needed to say that as well. I needed to name that emotion. And I was like, I feel angry. I feel really angry at this. And I don't know why. I don't know necessarily what's underlying that, but that's just how it is right now.
I love that. How is it today?
Yeah.
It's implying that it changes and it shouldn't be over it.
No.
When you mentioned anger, I couldn't help but think, do you think we avoid expressing that we might feel angry at the person and being like, how selfish, like how could you have done this to me? I worked so hard for you. Like it might be a fleeting thought.
Yeah.
But I find anger does often accompany when I'm working with clients who are coming for bereavement counselling. Like there is a moment of anger of how could you do this to me?
Yeah. I didn't have that thought. I think because I was more consumed by self-criticism, which is my lifelong natural tendency. So I followed that pattern. So it wasn't a thought, but I completely understand that other people would have that thought, and that would be a very normal thought. And I think it also comes to people's relationship with anger. I love anger as an emotion, and I don't have a negative relationship to feeling anger. I see anger as telling us that something's important to us, or that a boundary has been violated, or an injustice has occurred. And so I have a very healthy relationship with naming and being with anger. But I know some other people cope differently with anger. What about you?
I find anger fine.
Yeah.
I'm pretty unflappable in that sense. But I can see how we would avoid talking about anger with something like this. And that's why I think processing and having someone to kind of nut these things out with is really important, but having the right people. So not setting up a friend or family member up for failure if they don't know how to respond, if they don't have the skills to understand the nuances of these conversations. This might be the space for a professional. So some might be supervision, but then some might be therapy.
Yeah, exactly.
Because then you're left with a lot, and there is understanding, mental illness and feelings of distress and wanting the pain to end, and a history of, you might understand that person's profile and how they felt that that was what they needed to do in that moment.
Yeah.
And in the moment have that, it might be irrational, but it's still a feeling of, how could you do this to people?
Yeah, absolutely.
How could you, and then you see the aftermath of either the other professionals, like there was dozens of professionals impacted by this.
Yeah.
Family members that you think, if only you knew how much you will love. Or like there's a whole, it kept going.
Yeah, I just wish it could have been prevented. I wish this didn't happen. I think that was a big thing for me. I wish this didn't happen. And, afterwards we had to provide over all our notes to the coroner, because the coroner has to determine whether, this is in Western Australia, whether it was a murder or a suicide. It's just part of their normal processes. And that was scary. That was really scary. So it's just a lot of things to process.
Yeah, it is. And then supporting the family.
Yes, supporting the family.
So I was quite close with the family, having done some family therapy, but it felt like a conflict of interest to provide the bereavement.
Yes.
So then I had to do a very well thought out, gentle, warm handover to someone who could be sensitive to pick up that family.
And did you get help with that? Because I'm just imagining how emotional and just how you might be like so disconnected or detached and in your own grief as well. For me, I wasn't thinking logically. I felt like it was very difficult, and I was relying on my colleagues to be like, what do we do now? What's the next thing? Rather than me making these well thought out decisions. I just felt like I was a bit impaired. I just wondered how you were.
Yeah, probably a little bit of that. I had two supervisors so I was doing my EMDR accreditation. So I had my supervisor for that. And then I had my regular family therapy supervisor. So between the two of them and having some extra sessions, I was able to nut this out and have a bit of a plan with the support. And they were very generous with fitting me in around their schedules, which it was amazing, because I don't know if I could have waited a month.
No, oh my gosh,
to have to
way.
talk about something like that.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to talk about it with someone new.
Yes.
So I wanted to have that existing relationship. And both my supervisors have actually been guests on the podcast.
Oh, cool.
So if they're listeners, they did an amazing job, but it was a lot to juggle, because you have to – I didn't feel like I needed to talk about the case. So there was no confidentiality, HIPAA stuff.
Yeah, same.
That actually wasn't an issue in this particular story. It was the impact it had on me.
Yes. And
how to support those left behind who I had contact with until very recently of like that death, not recently at the time of recording, and then to make sure that they got the right support.
Yeah.
So that was really hard.
It is really hard.
And then it came to attending the funeral.
Yeah. Yep. So you attended?
It was virtual.
Okay.
Because of
COVID.
Of lockdown. Yeah, they only had limited numbers. And so
that's really sad.
It was nice in the fact that it meant I didn't have to, if someone asked, how do you know the person? I didn't have to disclose anything, which I felt would have broken a bit of confidentiality. Yeah. But then it meant that was just another thing I went through at home during lockdown.
Yeah.
So there was a space of my house that was now where I got bad news, where I got therapy, where I got supervision, where I was doing therapy, where I was doing supervision, and where I attended a funeral.
Yes.
And so it was just too much for one space.
Yes, exactly. Did you burn your space?
It's the room you've been sleeping in this week. It's now the spare bedroom. Don't worry, we did it doesn't have bad juju.
Okay, good.
I had to move the whole study around because I couldn't do it anymore in that room.
That's fair. That's entirely understandable. Like when I said, did you burn it? I mean, seriously, you needed to have an airing ceremony or something, because our memories are so closely tied to location as well. So completely understandable.
Yep. So now everything's now new desk, new computer.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't like I was like, stuff this and burnt everything.
Yeah.
But just it's been several years that things have been upgraded.
Yeah.
And if I was to do it again, I would probably have done maybe some artwork, done something quicker.
Yeah.
To just change that association.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the attending a funeral, when I was kind of researching a little bit around what people kind of say, a lot of it came down to the relationship you have with the family.
Yes.
And if they feel that you were to blame.
Yeah, exactly.
If like they felt you were responsible if there's ongoing legal things. So trying to balance how to balance your human need to maybe grieve, but still being a health professional that has to do no harm.
Yeah.
And so is you going there unwanted during maybe some legal proceedings going to be traumatizing to them?
Yes.
And so I actually think it might be one where it is a case by case.
I think it is a case by case. There is no hard or fast rule around this. You'll need to assess it in your individual circumstances.
But something to represent that I think would be helpful if you can't or choose not to go to a public ceremony, for example.
Yeah.
Finding a way to, I don't know, I guess, celebrate that person's life or mourn or grieve. You know, I think some of the stuff we read, another article I was reading was talking about like walking to a particular park that they maybe went to, or writing poetry or leaving something for that client. Like, we don't do grief well in general in our culture. And so I've done some podcast episodes on this complex life around grief, but we don't do it very well at all. So then I think it's death by suicide, the grief that comes with that is even less done well.
I agree. Yeah. And I think this, it's like the next phase is like you got to process it, and then it is like finding meaning and moving forward and coming to a resolution and finding a way to remember that client and manage your grief in ways that make sense to you, which I think is so individual as well.
And it's very much everything. It's such ACT is so good for it's holding everything lightly.
Yes.
So there might be could I have done something different, but not be hypervigilant.
Yes.
And let that consume you. Is there room for growth? And have compassion and empathy. And you're constantly finding this maturity and this balance and this wisdom in all of these things happening all at once.
Yeah. I mean, how I've come to think of it is that, losing a client to suicide, it's something that stays with me. Like you, if I talk about it too much and I focus on it too much, and I needed to focus on it a few weeks ago actually, because I was interviewing for a role which was supporting young people with suicidal thoughts. And so I talked a little bit about my experience and how I handled the loss of a client to suicide. And I noticed that I felt quite emotional talking about it. So it does stay with me, but I don't think it has to define me as a clinician. And I've integrated that experience into my professional identity, and not by ignoring it, but by learning from it and acknowledging it. And the way I honor that client is I keep a really fond memory of them in my mind, and I make sure that I honor them by, I guess, having learned from the experience as well. So that's been my meaning. And then the other part that's been really helpful for me is self-compassion. So as somebody who's highly critical of myself, self-compassion is always like the antidote for me. And I always follow like Kristen Neff's way of doing self-compassion, which is the self-kindness, common humanity, and mindfulness. And so the common humanity is so important. So that's recognizing that imperfection, suffering is a shared human experience, that I'm not alone. And it's something that binds me with others rather than separates me. So it's like many people have lost clients to suicide. I am one of those people. I respect myself and I hold myself with compassion and empathy and gentleness and kindness. And that's how I choose to treat myself rather than isolating myself or judging myself.
I love that.
Yeah.
There's really no advice in this. It's just sort of we're sharing our story and hoping that it helps other people feel less alone.
I think so, yeah.
I hadn't heard anyone talk about this.
I've never heard anybody talk about this, which is why I wanted to do the episode on it.
And I've listened to hundreds of hours of episodes.
Yeah, me too.
So we're just hoping to bring a little bit of discussion and food for thought.
Yeah.
Do you have any kind of pieces of encouragement or wisdom or where to from here?
Yeah, I think I would encourage people to keep on talking about it and to raise it in supervision, to raise it with trusted people, and to recognize that it does stay with you. I think one thing that I regret is I felt like I needed to get over it, in air quotes, really quick, and then just continue on to be a air quote professional. And I felt like it was unprofessional of me to still be so affected, but I really was. It's not like I was crying about it every day or anything, or paralyzed completely. Like I was still doing my job, but there was this part of me that was disconnected, and I wish I had given that part more airtime rather than shoving it down. So I would hope for others that they could, acknowledge it more and treat themselves with warmth and understanding rather than criticism or really struggling with that part. Yeah, that's it. What about you?
I wish I took a bit more time off.
Yeah.
I think it was really hard because we were in lockdown, that had I taken more time off, I couldn't go anywhere. So I would have been at home probably just binge watching TV. Like, it wouldn't have actually felt nourishing. So if it was out of that context, I would take more time off and reduce my load for a few weeks after, and probably book in regular supervision just in case. So maybe be like, great, and now can I see you the same time next week and then the week after, and then go back to our regular sort of monthly schedule or whatever. So, and I think I'm happy that I reached out to the people I did.
Yeah,
because that was hard. I'm just trying to think. It actually feels like such a blur. It was actually so long ago that it does feel like a bit of a blur, like a painful.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny that the different fragments that stick out.
Yeah, and I think that's the nature of like a very stressful time as well, is that our memory can be fragmented, which makes sense as well. But yeah, there are particular things that stand out, but I feel like mostly for me it's processed. What about you?
I think so. Now it's the sadness of a young life lost.
Totally.
Then there's sometimes I feel a little bit of guilt. I feel guilty that it still impacts me. Yeah, out of all the people that knew that person, I knew them the least amount of time. So I almost feel like, why should I be this upset? Am I taking away from other people? Like, it's almost like there's not suffering. It's just, there's enough to go around.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's like, am I unfairly impacted by this? And then other times I think it is what it is.
Yeah.
It sucks. It hurts.
Yeah.
If I saw, family members, I'd feel comfortable to say hi and do whatever and have that real personal touch. But it is really hard. And I guess part of my bigger mission, mainly through This Complex Life podcast and the mental health first aid training that I do, is to destigmatize mental ill health.
Yeah.
And to have bigger, more difficult conversations in a sort of longer form content than snippets here and there, and actually start bringing more of these conversations to people's ears, to have those tricky ones and to know what to do next. So how to support someone, what to say, what not to say, and maybe some kind of pointers around that. And if you're listening and this hasn't happened to you, this might be a really good chance to kind of think about what you might need if it did, and actually then have a chat with people you live with around, if I was to have a crisis at work, I'm not sure how to talk to you about it without trauma dumping, or I'm not sure if you would even know what to say. So actually then talking about it before that happens.
It's a really good point. Yeah. And I guess if you're a supervisor, to reflect on that as well, like how might you have these conversations with supervisees?
And there is a lot of post-vention support out there. So for organisations, there is a lot of support around what to do as an organisation, but we just wanted to share our own experiences.
Absolutely.
That brings us to the end of this important conversation. And thank you, Bronwyn, for such vulnerability and honesty. This collaboration has been great to share with the audience different perspectives. So thank you. We know that losing a client to suicide is one of the hardest experiences a mental health professional can face, and yet it's something that often goes unspoken. So if today's discussion resonated with you, know that you're not alone. Grief, guilt, self-doubt, they're all natural responses, but they don't define your work or your worth. If you're struggling with the impact of a client's suicide, reach out for support, whether that's supervision, peer networks, your own therapy. And if you're in a leadership role, think about how you can create a culture where these conversations can happen without fear or stigma. A huge thank you to Bronwyn for joining me in this discussion. You can find more of her work over at the Mental Work podcast. And if you found this episode helpful, please share it with a colleague. Follow the Inside Social Work podcast on your favourite podcast platform and leave a rating or a review. It helps more people find us and listen in on these conversations. Take care, and I'll see you next time.